The room was filled with energy. A large martial arts exhibition was underway. Fighters, students, and fans packed tightly together. Cameras flashed. Conversations overlapped. Everyone was there to witness strength, skill, and reputation. Steven Seagal stood near the side of the hall, calm and composed. No dramatic entrance. No need for attention. His posture was relaxed, his expression unreadable. To some, he looked almost disconnected from the noise around him. And then, Bolo Yeung arrived. The atmosphere shifted instantly. His massive frame drew eyes the moment he stepped in. People whispered his name. Some stepped aside instinctively. Confidence radiated from him, the kind that demands to be noticed. Their eyes met. Just for a second. But sometimes, that's all it takes. When two strong personalities share the same space, tension doesn't need an argument. Ego speaks silently first, through posture, through presence, through pride. Bolo smirked. Steven didn't react. That silence seemed to bother him. Bolo took a few steps forward, loud enough for people nearby to hear. His tone wasn't aggressive yet, but it was challenging. Curious. Testing. People started paying attention. Phones slowly came out. Steven turned slightly, acknowledging him with nothing more than a calm glance. Most people mistake calmness for weakness. In reality, calm is often the result of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. Before anything escalated, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Country and city? Drop it in the comments. Because moments like this don't belong to one place, they happen everywhere. Bo spoke again, louder this time. His words weren't insults yet, but they were clearly an invitation. A public one. The crowd leaned in. Steven remained still. No smile. No anger. Just quiet control. And that's when everyone realized. This wasn't just a meeting. It was the beginning of a challenge. And no one knew how it was going to end. The air between them felt heavy. Bolo Yeung stepped closer, his voice now loud enough to reach the surrounding crowd. Conversations faded as attention shifted toward the tension unfolding in real time. So, Bolo said, folding his arms, this is Steven Seagal. A few people laughed nervously. Others stayed silent. Steven didn't respond right away. He simply looked at Bolo, not with fear, not with arrogance, but with quiet observation. When someone challenges you publicly, they're not always looking for a fight. Most of the time, they're looking for validation, a reaction that proves they matter. Bolo took Steven's silence as an opening. I've heard a lot about you, he continued. Stories. Reputation. But I've always wondered how much of it is real. The crowd reacted immediately. Gasps. Whispers. Phones rising higher. Steven finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. I'm here to observe, not to compete. That answer seemed to irritate Bolo more than any insult could have. Of course, Bolo replied with a smirk. That's what people say when they don't want to be tested. Ego doesn't like boundaries. When you refuse to play along, it feels like disrespect to the person seeking attention. Bolo took another step forward. The space between them narrowed. Let's be honest, he said. People don't come here to watch observers. They come to see who's real. The crowd was fully locked in now. Steven's expression didn't change. I don't measure myself by crowds, he replied. Or by noise. That sentence landed harder than expected. A ripple of murmurs moved through the audience. Before this goes any further, let me ask you something. If someone questioned your abilities in front of everyone, what would you do? Comment stay calm or prove it. Bo laughed, shaking his head. You're calm, he said. I'll give you that. But calm doesn't stop power. Steven nodded slightly. Neither does power without control. This wasn't just a verbal exchange anymore. It was two philosophies colliding, strength through dominance versus strength through discipline. Bo turned to the crowd, raising his voice. Everyone here wants to know the truth. Why don't you show them? The challenge was clear now. Public. Direct. Steven looked around, at the students, the fighters, the younger faces watching closely. He paused. Not because he was unsure, but because he was choosing. Real masters don't react. They decide. Steven exhaled slowly. I'm not interested in fighting, he said. But if a demonstration will end this, I'm willing. The room erupted. Bolo's smile faded for the first time. Good, he said. Because I don't hold back. Steven met his gaze. I don't expect you to. Silence followed. The kind that makes your heartbeat louder. And in that moment, as they prepared to step forward, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This challenge had already crossed a line. And there was no turning back now. They stepped onto the mat. The noise of the room didn't disappear, but it faded, like the world had narrowed its focus to just two men. Bolo Yeung stood tall, rolling his shoulders, his confidence feeding off the crowd's energy. He looked powerful, ready, almost impatient. Steven Seagal, on the other hand, didn't change at all. His stance was relaxed. Hands loose. Breathing steady. This difference mattered more than people realized. When someone is truly confident, their body doesn't rush. Tension burns energy. Calm preserves it. Bolo noticed it. "You sure you're ready?" he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I don't want excuses later." Steven gave a small nod. "Take your time," he said. "Do what you do." That answer confused some people and irritated others. Bolo took it as permission. He moved first. Fast. Direct. Aggressive. A powerful step forward, shoulders driving in, intent clear. The crowd gasped as his size and speed collided toward Steven. But Steven didn't retreat. He shifted. Just a half step. Barely noticeable. Most people think defense means backing away. Experienced fighters know better. Sometimes, the safest place is just slightly off the line of attack. Bolo's momentum carried him forward, and suddenly, he wasn't hitting what he expected. Steven's hand came up, not striking, not blocking, redirecting. The movement was smooth. Almost gentle. Yet Be on the Lookout stumbled. The crowd reacted instantly. "What just happened?" someone whispered. Bolo turned sharply, surprised. His smile was gone now. He circled Steven, breathing heavier. "You got lucky," Bolo muttered. Steven remained still. "There's no luck here," he said calmly. "Only timing." Ego hates uncertainty. The moment Bolo lost control of the exchange, doubt crept in, and doubt makes people reckless. Bolo charged again. This time harder. The mat shook beneath his feet. Steven raised his arm, not to strike, but to guide. Bolo's force redirected once more, his balance compromised again, more noticeably this time. A wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd. Phones zoomed in. "Before we go any further, let me ask you, do you think real strength is about overpowering someone or controlling the situation? Comment power or control." Bo stepped back, visibly frustrated now. "You keep dodging," he snapped. "Fight me." Steven's voice remained calm. "I'm not dodging," he said. "I'm teaching." That sentence landed like a slap. When someone realizes they're being handled instead of challenged, it strikes at pride, especially in front of an audience. Bolo rushed again, but this time, Steven didn't move away. He stepped in. The crowd inhaled sharply. Steven's hand connected to Bolo's arm, not with force, but with precision. In one fluid motion, he turned Bolo's momentum inward. Suddenly, Bolo froze. Not because he was hurt, but because he couldn't move. Steven had control. The hall went silent. You could hear breathing. Shoes shifting. A phone hitting the floor. This is the moment people misunderstand. Control isn't about domination, it's about understanding leverage, balance, and restraint. Steven released him immediately and stepped back. No celebration. No expression. Bo stood there, stunned. He rolled his shoulder, testing it, realizing he had just been stopped without being struck. For the first time, doubt showed clearly on his face. And that's when everyone watching understood something important. This wasn't about who was stronger. It was about who understood strength better. And Bolo Yeung had just realized he underestimated the man in front of him. The silence didn't break right away. Bolo Yeung stood in the center of the mat, rolling his shoulders again, testing his balance. Nothing hurt. Nothing felt injured. And that bothered him more than pain ever could. Steven Seagal had already stepped back. No posture of victory. No raised hands. No reaction at all. This is the moment that unsettles people the most. When someone proves superiority, and then acts like nothing happened. It forces the other person to confront reality without excuses. The crowd waited. Some expected Bolo to laugh it off. Others expected anger. Instead, he exhaled sharply. "Again," Bolo said. His voice wasn't as loud this time. Steven studied him for a moment. Not judgmentally, thoughtfully. "If you want," Steven replied. "But slow down." That sentence sparked quiet laughter in the crowd. Bolo frowned. I don't need instructions. Ego resists guidance, especially when it comes from someone who just exposed your weakness. They squared up again. This time, Bolo approached cautiously. His movements were tighter now, more controlled. The confidence was still there, but it was no longer careless. Steven adjusted his stance slightly, lowering his center of gravity. The change was subtle, but real fighters noticed. Bolo launched a controlled strike, not as explosive as before, but deliberate. Steven met it. Not with force. With alignment. His forearm intercepted Bolo's arm at the exact angle needed to neutralize power. He pivoted his hips, redirecting energy downward. Bolo felt it instantly. His strength vanished, not because it was gone, but because it had nowhere to go. Power depends on structure. Break the structure, and power collapses on itself. Be on the lookout staggered back 2 steps. This time, there were no whispers. Only wide eyes. Phone stayed raised, hands shaking slightly as people realized they were witnessing something rare, not a fight, but a lesson. Steven spoke calmly, so only Bo could hear. You're strong, he said. But strength needs direction. Bolo clenched his jaw. You think you're better than me? He asked. Steven shook his head. No. I think you're fighting the wrong thing. This wasn't about ego anymore. Steven wasn't competing, he was communicating. And that's what made the moment uncomfortable. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever realized mid-argument that the other person wasn't trying to win, but to teach? Comment yes or no. I want to know. Bolo inhaled deeply. For the first time, he hesitated. Then he attacked again. Faster, sharper, frustration leaking through every movement. Steven responded immediately. 2 steps. 1 pivot. A controlled grip. Bolo's momentum collapsed into itself. In one fluid motion, Steven guided him downward, not slamming him, not humiliating him, simply placing him on the mat. The impact was soft. The effect was devastating. The crowd exploded. Not with cheers, but with disbelief. Steven released him instantly and stepped away again. Restraint is louder than aggression. It tells everyone watching, I could do more, but I won't. Bolo stayed on the mat for a second longer than necessary. Not because he was hurt, but because he was processing. When he stood, his face had changed. The arrogance was gone. In its place, focus. Respect. He bowed his head slightly. The crowd noticed. Steven nodded back. No smile. No pride. Just acknowledgement. Someone in the audience spoke out loud without realizing it. He's not trying to beat him, he's controlling him. That realization spreads fast. Once people see control, brute force loses its appeal. Bolo finally spoke, his voice quieter now. You could have finished that. Steven answered honestly. Yes. Why didn't you? Bolo asked. Steven looked around, at the students, the younger fighters, the faces absorbing every second. Because winning isn't the point, he said. Understanding is. Silence returned, heavier than before. And in that silence, something shifted. This was no longer a challenge. It was a turning point. But what happened next would change how everyone remembered this moment forever. The room didn't feel the same anymore. What had started as excitement had turned into something heavier, something thoughtful. People weren't shouting now. They weren't cheering. They were watching closely, quietly, like students witnessing a lesson they didn't expect to learn. Bolo Yeung stood across from Steven Seagal, breathing slower now, his chest rising and falling with control instead of aggression. For the first time since this began, Be on the Lookout didn't look invincible. This is the point where ego starts to crack. Not because someone lost, but because they realize they could lose again. And worse, they don't understand how. Bolo broke the silence. You're holding back, he said. Steven didn't deny it. Yes. The honesty caught Bolo off guard. You think that makes you superior? Bolo asked. Steven shook his head slowly. No. It makes me responsible. That answer hit differently. Around them, the crowd leaned in. Real confidence doesn't need to dominate. It understands consequences. That's something experience teaches, not strength. Bolo clenched his fists. Do it again, he said. Don't teach. Don't guide. Show me. This time, the challenge wasn't loud. It was personal. Steven studied him carefully. If I do, he said, you won't like what you learn. The room went still. Before we continue, let me ask you backhand index pointing down. Question mark, do you think it takes more courage to prove someone wrong, or to protect their dignity? Comment prove or protect. Bolo stepped forward anyway. I'm ready. Steven nodded once. They moved. Not explosively. Not dramatically. Purposefully. Bolo attacked with controlled power, refined, disciplined, but still fueled by pride. Steven met him halfway, closing distance instead of retreating. Closing distance is risky. It requires timing, trust in technique, and calm under pressure. Most people avoid it. Masters don't. In a single motion, Steven connected to Bolo's arm, rotated his own hips, and shifted weight downward. The movement was so efficient it almost looked slow. Almost. Bolo felt his balance disappear. Before he could react, Steven had full control, leverage locked, posture broken, strength neutralized. Bolo froze. His eyes widened slightly. He wasn't in pain. He was trapped. The realization hit him harder than any strike ever could. This is what regret feels like in real time, the moment you realize you stepped into something you didn't understand. Steven held him there for just a second longer. Long enough for Bolo to know. Then he released him. Be on the lookout staggered back, catching himself, heart pounding. The crowd erupted, but Steven raised his hand gently. Silence returned. Steven turned to Bolo. This isn't about winning, he said. It never was. Bo swallowed hard. I thought strength meant pressure, he admitted quietly. Steven nodded. Most people do. This is where the lesson became unavoidable. Bo didn't lose because he was weak. He lost because he confused force with understanding. Bo took a step back and looked around, at the students, the phones recording, the faces watching intently. For the first time, embarrassment crossed his face. Not because he was exposed, but because he realized he had tried to expose someone else. Before we go on, be honest with yourself. Have you ever challenged someone, and then realized you underestimated them? If yes, comment humbled. Bolo turned back to Steven. I regret how I approached this, he said. I thought making it public would prove something. Steven's expression softened slightly. It did, he replied. Bolo looked up. What? It showed everyone the difference between confidence and ego. The words settled heavily. Regret isn't weakness. It's awareness arriving late, but still arriving. Bo bowed his head. Not deeply. Not dramatically. But sincerely. The crowd noticed immediately. Respect replaced tension. Steven returned the gesture with a simple nod. No applause followed. And somehow, that made the moment even more powerful. Steven addressed the crowd calmly. Strength is impressive, he said. But restraint is unforgettable. People nodded without realizing they were doing it. Bolo stepped aside, allowing Steven space. The challenge was over. But the lesson had just begun. And as the crowd slowly realized what they had witnessed, one truth became clear to everyone present. Bolo Yeung didn't regret being controlled. He regretted assuming control belonged to him. The energy in the hall had changed completely. Moments earlier, people had come hoping to witness dominance, to see who would overpower whom. Now, they stood quietly, absorbing something far more rare. Understanding. Bolo Yeung stepped away from the center of the mat, his posture different than before. Not smaller, just more grounded. The tension in his shoulders had softened, and the fire in his eyes had cooled into focus. Steven Seagal remained where he was, calm as ever. True respect doesn't explode. It settles. When ego leaves the room, clarity walks in. The organizer of the event hesitated before stepping forward, unsure whether to interrupt the moment. But Steven gestured gently, signaling it was fine. Steven turned toward the crowd. I didn't come here to prove anything, he said. His voice carried easily, not because it was loud, but because people were listening. A few students in the front row leaned closer. I came to learn, Steven continued, and to remind myself why discipline matters. Bo looked at him, surprised. You learned something? Bolo asked. Steven nodded. Yes. Every exchange teaches something, if you're willing to listen. That line hit hard because it flipped the narrative. The so-called winner wasn't claiming superiority, he was claiming curiosity. Before we go further, let me ask you, do you believe respect should be demanded or earned quietly? Comment demanded or earned. A senior martial artist in the audience finally spoke up, his voice steady with authority. What we just witnessed, he said, was not a fight. It was control without cruelty. Heads nodded across the room. Bo inhaled deeply and turned back to Steven. I challenged you publicly, he admitted. That wasn't fair. Steven didn't disagree. No, he said. But it was honest. Honesty doesn't always arrive politely. Sometimes it comes through conflict. Bolo hesitated, then extended his hand. The crowd held its breath. Steven looked at the hand for a moment, not in hesitation, but in acknowledgement of the weight behind it. Then he shook it. The room erupted, not with chaos, but with appreciation. Not cheers. Recognition. Bo spoke again, louder now, addressing the crowd. I thought strength meant being feared, he said. Today, I saw something different. He gestured toward Steven. I saw strength that didn't need permission. That admission took courage. And courage earns respect faster than dominance ever could. Steven responded quietly. Fear fades, he said. Understanding lasts. The organizer announced a brief break, but no one moved. No one wanted the moment to end. Steven stepped off the mat and addressed the younger fighters nearby. Train your body, he said. But educate your mind. Because one day, your body will fail you, and your mind won't. Phones recorded every word. Before we finish this part, let me ask you one last thing. What do you respect more in a martial artist? Raw power or discipline? Comment power or discipline. Bro stood beside Steven now, no longer opposing him, but aligned. I underestimated you, Bolo said quietly. Steven replied simply. That happens when you judge before you observe. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but the atmosphere remained heavy with reflection. People weren't talking about who won. They were talking about what they learned. And as Steven and Bolo walked off the mat together, side by side, one thing was clear to everyone watching. This moment would be remembered not for the challenge, but for the humility that followed it. And yet, beyond that room, beyond that day, something bigger was already beginning. Because the story wasn't over. It was about to travel far beyond those walls. By the time the hall began to empty, something invisible had already left with the crowd. A story. Phones were lowered, but videos were already uploading. Clips spread across platforms within hours, slowed down, replayed, analyzed. Titles varied, but the message stayed the same. This wasn't a fight. This was a lesson. This is what real strength looks like. Steven Seagal didn't stay long after the event. No interviews. No speeches for attention. He spoke briefly with a few students, nodded respectfully to the organizers, and left quietly, the same way he had arrived. Bolo Yeung stayed behind a little longer. Not to explain himself, but to listen. The moments that change us most don't always come with applause. They come with reflection, when the noise fades and the truth settles in. Online, the debate exploded. Some argued about techniques. Others argued about who won. But most people noticed something deeper. They noticed what didn't happen. No trash talk. No humiliation. No ego-fueled victory lap. Just control and restraint. Before we go further, let me ask you something important when you watch the story. What stands out more, the technique or the mindset? Comment skill or mindset. Martial artists from different disciplines weighed in. Some praised Steven's efficiency. Others highlighted Bolo's humility in accepting the moment. But one comment kept repeating over and over. This is how real masters behave. In a world obsessed with dominance, humility feels rare, and that's why it spread so fast when people see it. A few days later, Bolo addressed the moment in a short statement. I didn't regret being challenged, he said. I regretted assuming I understood something I hadn't studied deeply enough. That line resonated. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. Steven never responded publicly. And somehow, that silence said more than words ever could. You don't always need to explain yourself when your actions already did the talking. The video continued to circulate. Not just among fighters, but among everyday people. Parents shared it with their kids. Teachers referenced it in discussions about discipline. Viewers who had never practiced martial arts commented the same thing. This applies to life. Because it did. It wasn't about who was stronger. It was about who stayed calm under pressure. Who chose understanding over ego. Who knew when not to strike. Before we end, I want to ask you one final question. Do you think moments like this change people, or just reveal who they already are? Comment change or reveal. Steven walked away unchanged. Bolo walked away wiser. And the audience walked away with something rare, a reminder that true power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Because when strength is real, it speaks through restraint. Through respect. Through silence. If you believe real strength is shown through control, not ego, type respect in the comments. Like this video if this lesson hit deeper than expected. Subscribe for more powerful stories where mindset matters more than muscle. Because the strongest battles are the ones we choose not to fight.